one station making history every day.
Chicago, Chicago.
Now, John Cass and Lauren Cohn.
89 WLS. In constant sorrow all through his day. I am a man of constant sorrow. I've seen trouble all my day. I bid farewell.
But we bid hello to Chicago. It is 9:08.
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Lauren Cohn, John Cass, you heard her voice.
We have a lot to talk about this morning, a lot going on.
What's going on, Lauren?
Well, we've got the Supreme Court, who is now, the news today came out whether or not they're actually going to make a decision when in regards to gay marriage.
And Proposition 8 and California's attempt to ban same-sex marriage.
Later on, we're going to be talking about Chicago Public Schools and some rallies that are going to be going on downtown.
And those see-through yoga pants.
And Lululemon and the ongoing controversy on the see-through yoga pants.
But we'll get into that whole thing about how we had a little discussion on this subject before the meeting. But first, the Supreme Court taking up yesterday and today the question of same-sex marriage. And Justice Anton Scalia had a question.
When did it become unconstitutional to exclude homosexual couples from marriage? 1791, 1868, when the 14th Amendment was adopted, sometime after Baker, where we said it didn't even raise a substantial federal question. When did the law become this?
Interesting question, Justice Scalia. On the line now is Harold Krent, Dean and Professor of Law at the Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago Kent College of Law. Professor Krent, are you there with us?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. So what do you make of what happened yesterday and what will happen today? If you could give us an outline.
There are two different legal issues, but I think it's important really to think about Justice Scalia's question and say it's amazing how far the country has moved in 10 years, whether that's due to changing culture, to social media, to just interactions with people who are gay and a demystification of those who are gay. Who knows? But no one would have thought the Supreme Court have wrestled with this question and be poised to strike down bans on gay marriage a mere 10 years ago.
Neither of us are lawyers, although Cass and Cohn does sound like a law firm, does it not?
It certainly does.
The question I would have is the Supreme Court there to ratify the political mood of the moment, or is it there to be a check on the political mood, given what you just said, which is an amazing change, at least on the surface, in public opinion, radical change in a very short period of time? Is the Supreme Court there to then, as that radical change is discussed, to immediately ratify that?
Ideally, the Supreme Court there is a check on majoritarianism, a check on the mood of the country. But the Supreme Court is also, members are also influenced by developments and movements across the country, and it's hard for them to be isolated from that. In this case, we, as Justice Scalia's questions illustrated, people feel differently about the question of whether it's appropriate to have a particular morality of marriage stamped on everybody in this country. That rather we should allow for two individuals to decide to marry and commit to themselves and receive equal federal benefits or state recognition, irrespective of the whether it's an opposite or same sex marriage.
That sounds like an argument, not addressing Scalia's question, correct?
Well, the question is
your argument.
What is equal protection of the law? Mm-hmm. How do we know who do we decide to treat the same or different? I think that there is both Prop 8 in California, Congress through the Defense of Marriage Act has the ability to legislate morality to a certain extent. But the problem here is that the legislation of morality does impinge upon very fundamental rights of others in society.
So what does it say about the court if they suddenly may not make this type of decision? They don't necessarily want to make this decision.
Well, in the Prop 8 case, it was heard yesterday, there's discussion that the court may try to duck the case. As a technical matter, the plaintiffs in that case may not have standing to trigger the court's full analysis, or the court may have reconsidered its grant of certiorari and decide to duck the case. I don't think that's going to happen today. I think that the challenge to the Defense of Marriage Act is likely to go forward. If it does go forward, I would predict that the court will strike down the Defense of Marriage Act, which means that all it means is that in the states that recognize same-sex marriage must accord those individuals federal benefits. But obviously in the states that don't accord their members protection for same-sex marriage, then they wouldn't have to accord federal benefits to those individuals.
And there are 40 states. Of today's. And am I right? There are 40 states that still don't allow it.
That's correct. That's correct. I think there's slightly over 40 states.
So when there's an issue that we agree with politically, we want the states to be overridden by the federal government, and when we don't, we want the federal government, the court, to protect the states. Is that how it basically
Federalism
works?
is a two-edged prong, right? And you're absolutely right that from a political pundit's perspective, federalism is good when you believe in what the states are doing, and federalism is bad when you don't believe in what the states are doing.
Exactly. What about religious freedom in all this? The slippery slope argument, I tried to touch on it in the column today. Where's the tolerance for religion in the larger discussion? Traditional Christians, Orthodox Jews, Muslims, how are they to make? What are they to make of this?
Well, there's another, I think, angle on that too, which is not on the Defense of Marriage Act per se, but if you think about the ban, if the ban in California is struck down in a way that mandates the recognition of same-sex marriage, is plural marriage, which is legal in many Muslim countries and was practiced by Mormons here generations ago, and still on TV. Must that be accorded equal respect? Because do we give this sort of privileging of the dominant religion to sort of cast the character of the country and decide what is marriage, what is holy matrimony, what is or do we say that as long as there's no sociological studies of injury from plural marriage, that we should recognize that as well? And I think that this generation we'll face that issue.
Well, that's
not an easy question.
Professor, that's the question we have for our listeners, and they can call in 591-8900. And for you, sir, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Traffic and weather. First on the fives with Ryan Burrow. We'll be taking your calls in a second. John Cass, Lauren Cohn. The question, can you be a Christian, Muslim, Orthodox Jew, and not be considered a bigot if you don't embrace same-sex marriage? A question I asked in today's Tribune column, but Lauren wanted to help us with some quotes.
Well, and I think it's really interesting because that's an interesting question. It's interesting to me when you look at the diversity on the Supreme Court and to hear what their comments are. And Justice Sonia Sotomayor, quote, "If the issue is letting the states experiment and letting the society have more time to figure out its direction," she said, "why is taking a case now the answer?" And then this statement came from Justice Kennedy, who was talking about Prop 8 in California and said, quote, "There are some 40,000 children in California who live with same-sex parents and they want their parents to have full recognition and full status. The voice of those children is important in this case." So it's interesting to me to hear the different frame of minds as we discuss this that are coming out of.
Those are two people on the Sotomayor and Kennedy, two on the liberal side. Mm-hmm. Kennedy, if he backs off and they don't vote for it, basically affirming the decision by the government of California, the liberal government, to stop Proposition 8. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like voting present and letting the thing go through.
Right.
How about if we take some calls?
Yep.
All right, Lance in Lakeview. Lakeview, Lance.
Hey, Lauren, John, great show. As a libertarian, I see some great parallels coming right now that really no one else has talked about, or at least I haven't heard. You have this outcry for this, they call it gay marriage, but let's face it, it's government out of the bedroom. Now, a very left wing in the past, we would have looked at this. But let's look at the other side of that coin. We've got the gun rights issue. The liberals thought, the progressives thought they were going to be able to ram this gun rights through. But you had a lot of people on both sides, and you have a lot of people both sides on this marriage issue coming together. And they're coming together because at the end of the day, and churches should have a right to to say what they want in the pulpit. They should have a right to preach what they want in their pulpit. But at the end of the day, I think the American people, and I think there's a parallel to both of these arguments and both of the excitement and the energy generated by both of these issues, I think you're really starting to see the American people come to a point where it's government, get out of my life, we've had enough. That's the part of this that I see as encouraging. I see it at a time where until force is used, both sides should be able to debate, we should be able to say what we want, but at the end of the day, we should go into our homes and be protected. We should go into our bedrooms and be protected, in our churches and be protected. The big underlying albatross of all this that I see as a positive, what I see that's great about this, is you have people from both sides coming together on freedom issues and saying that it's enough.
Okay.
No more big government.
Thanks, Lance. We're going to get to another call. John on the west side. John, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Excuse me. My first comment, the reason I called was because you were talking about public opinion. Mm-hmm. I maintain that there has been overwhelming manipulation by the media in favor of the homosexual lifestyle and gay marriage. It's comparable, I think, to I'm a senior, so I remember when smoking was just great. Doctors were smoking in their offices, and ads were showing movie actors smoking. Mm-hmm. And those opposing smoking had almost no standing. I think that it's turned around.
Well, we have many calls today, but I'll tell you this, and I know it sounds like self-promotion, I'm sorry, but if you read today's Page 2 column, it addresses the issues you're talking about. Can people of faith, not be called bigots? I mean, where's the tolerance for people of faith? Thank you, John. Let's take Jim in the car. Jim, you're on with Lauren Cohn, John Cass.
Good morning. One of the greatest presidents in our history from Illinois once said that he hoped that government of and for and by the people should never perish from the face of the earth. We live in a representative democracy, republic, where a majority rules. And when that question was put in front of the people of California, they voted overwhelmingly to not want it. Yet we give credence to 5 people in a case where they didn't agree with the outcome, where they can tie up the court system to question the overwhelming opinion of the many. I'll listen to your comments, but to me that doesn't make a whole, regardless of the topic.
Well, Lauren and I will gladly pick this up after the break. Right now, we're back after this.
89 WLS. When you want Chicago's classic hits, turn to 94.7 WLS. For traffic and weather info, tune in to 890 AM WLS for traffic and weather first on the 5s when you need it most.
We know we're getting a lot of your calls. Dawn is going to get the last word today. We'll be back to it later again this week. Dawn in Plainfield.
Good morning. Good morning. I just wanted to make the point that the government legislates morality all the time. In the case of abortion, when it's inconvenient, they say that it's not a life and it's okay to murder it. But if a woman is pregnant and she's murdered, that person gets prosecuted for 2 homicides. So in that case, they do see it as a life.
Okay, Dawn.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. Thank you for your commentary. When we come back, Lauren, we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, Lauren?
You go into a restaurant, you make a reservation, right? I don't hate you. He's starting to laugh because there are a couple stories we want to talk about coming up next. One of them is you go to a restaurant, you make a reservation, you decide you can't go, right?
Yeah, you can't
Should
go.
somebody shame you because you didn't cancel your reservation?
Should the restaurant shame me?
Should you be required to call in and tell them you can't make it? Is that just, being a good person?
When I go to my
or if you
dentist,
don't, should they then put it out on social media and make you feel bad?
Nothing like shaming people when they want to
Shaming.
spend their money on you.
And the other story we're going to be talking about is this whole controversy with Lululemon, the yoga pants. And this is a story that John wanted to cover this morning,
right.
so we're going to cover it.
Okay.
All the bases.
All right. John Cass, Lauren Cohn, News with Ryan Burrow. It's 9:30.
89 WLS.